Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I am sketching some birdies with ink and watercolor. I decided I want to do this instead of a flower today. I'm drawing birdies a lot because they are one of my favorite motifs beside flowers, and I just started a new sketchbook and I will use those birds as a reference for my drawings today. I think if you haven't drawn birds before and you're not into birds a lot, then I would recommend using maybe a pencil and sketch them out before you go in with the ink. I am starting with the ink, but I have drawn so many birds that's pretty easy for me. If you want to learn how to draw birds, I recommend John Muir's YouTube channel. He has some amazing in-depth drawing videos. He is a nature journaler, and he gives you all the knowledge he has, and that's really helpful. And he has a really great technique to draw birds, and it's super easy. I will link up his channel in my video description. By the way, he also has an excellent book about nature journaling. It's full of information and it's kind of a nature journaling Bible, I would say. The ink I am using is waterproof, but I learned that you have to let it dry for some hours. I usually let it sit overnight. And as always, I try to keep my sketch very loose. I like to have wonky lines, and they don't have to be perfect. That's not important for me. I just want to get the cuteness of the bird. As always, I keep my video in real time, so you have the chance to sketch and paint along. I find it easier if I want to learn something to see the artist painting and sketching in real time and not in a speed up version. But if it's too slow for you, you can always use that little gear of the YouTube settings and speed the video up. I always start with really light lines, even if it's a black ink, and in case I am drawing something in the wrong position, I can always redraw it with a new line, and I don't mind that I have two lines in some areas instead of only one. I think that makes it very easy, and it's also less intimidating because I go for a sketchy feel, and it's not that important that all the lines are in the correct position. But what I have to say here with the birds, it's not as easy as flowers because you have to look a little bit for the proportions if you don't want to have your birdie looking a bit strange. I'm really sorry that I forgot to move my journal a little bit more up, but I promise the next bird will be full on your screen. sketching a bird directly from the front view is a little bit difficult for me because of its beak. It's kind of an anchor point where I can draw away from and where I have some guides in my head to draw, and it's a little bit difficult to have that beak in the middle of the bird and not as an outline. I also don't pay much attention on its feet. It's very difficult to sketch or to draw bird feet, and I just sketch them very quickly and don't give them much detail. As always, I have a blog post for this video on my website, and I will link this up in the video description, and so you can see some close-up images of the birdies. What's also important when you draw faces or animals, always leave a highlight in the eyes. If you paint them just black, it will look strange. As I said, I let this dry a few hours so I can go in with my watercolors, and I will not use realistic coloring for the birds because I really like to use the color palette that I have in mind and that inspires me at the moment. So I'm just using what I want. This color is a mixture of carmine and a tiny little bit of black. I'm coloring in everything very loose, just as I do it with the flowers I normally sketch on my Wednesday videos. And I also let some color bleed into the background. When I started with drawing more, I always thought that drawing is the hard part and coloring is not the problem finally. And now it's like I can draw everything if I want to, because it's just drawing, and adding color always is a hard thing, I feel. I experiment a lot with adding color and how to sketch in or draw in my motifs, and I really found out that I find it harder to color in than to draw. Not sure what you are thinking about that. Is coloring easy for you, or is it more difficult? What do you prefer? Do you like to draw more, or do you like to add color? I'm coloring in the next bird in the same way, but I feel this is getting a little bit boring, and I will use some other techniques for the other two birds. I decided to color in the other two birdies with markers and colored pencils. I'm using water-based markers because alcohol markers are bleeding through the pages, so I decided to pick some of the Aquamarkers from Action and some of my Twimarkers from Arteza. I don't have some expensive markers such as the Tombow brush pens. I don't know their name at the moment because they are so expensive, and I have never bought some, but maybe I will look for a set in the future, because the tips of the Action markers are not very good. They get damaged very quickly. I'm very happy with the Arteza Twimarkers, but what I'm missing here are some lighter colors. I'm testing out some of the markers on the left side, so I can choose the one I like for my birds. I learned quickly that coloring in this ink with markers is not easy because it's really hard and it rubs away the ink and then it bleeds into the color. I think that might be because of the paper. It's very, I would say it's non-porous. And so I think maybe this is the reason why the ink is coming off. I will try the same technique in my sketchbook that is meant for drawing and not for watercolors. But watercolors are working really good in this book, so I will try it there and see if the ink does also bleed. When sketching with markers, I also make sure to leave some white areas and to keep it very quick and loose. You can easily overwork your sketch when you go in with too many lines and with too much color. I practice a lot to get a loose style of coloring in my sketches, and it's sometimes a really hard job because I tend to overdo everything. I'm adding some shadows with a darker marker. It's always good to have highlights and shadows that makes your motif look more dimensional. I'm letting the left bird dry completely before I go in with my colored pencils, and meanwhile I am coloring in the last bird. I'm using my watercolors again because I don't want the ink to bleed and my brush is just softer than the markers. But I think of my brush as if it is a marker, so I get a similar look. What I like about markers in a sketchbook is that you don't have a long drying time. They are dry in between of a few minutes and then you can add more details with colored pencils. When I use colored pencils on top, I always paint it over my first layer to see which color I get, and here I am getting a really nice orange, and so I decided to use this Naples yellow. It's the Naples yellow dark, and I'm using the Faber-Castell Polychromos. For the shadow areas, I'm using the Arteza Twimarker again on my last birdie, as this is such a dark color. I don't mind if there's some ink bleeding into it. That was my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see us next time. I wish you a wonderful rest of the week. Bye!